Good morning and welcome to the Lynnwood Times candidate interview with Lynnwood Mayoral candidates Christine Frizzell and Jim Smith. I'm your host, Lynnwood Times reporter Bo Brusco, and I'm joined with Lynnwood Times publisher Mario Lotmore. We're going to begin with a brief bio of both candidates, starting with Christine Frizzell. So Christine says that she is running to be the next mayor of Lynnwood. She grew up in Lynnwood and went to schools here, as did both her daughters. She's a proud graduate of Meadowdale High School and attends Edmonds Community College, and graduated from Central Washington University with a BS, Bachelor's in Science in Accounting. She worked for a variety of businesses before beginning her own accounting firm. She brings 40 years of accounting experience to the city. She attended city finance meetings for 3 years before being on the council and has the perspective of 3 finance directors who have worked for the city. Since 1995, she has volunteered with many organizations to connect with people who are low income or homeless. This has taken her under bridges, into jail cells, and onto boards and leadership positions with those organizations. She is a support of safety in the community, has served 2 years as a fire commissioner for South County Fire, and has received their endorsement along with many others, including our Lynnwood Police Officers Union. She looks forward to moving the city forward in areas of diversity and equity, housing and financial accountability, and transparency. With her leadership experience and collaborative mentality, her passion is to lead Lynnwood into being the place we are all proud to live, work, and play. So Christine Frizzell, first question for you. The mayor is the chief administrative officer for the city, in charge of staffing, responsible for its daily operations, and implements legislation passed by the council. What will your top 3 priorities be if elected to office?
My top priorities are to listen, learn, plan, and execute. So there's a lot that we don't see sitting in the city council seat. But I'm eager to meet with directors and better understand each of their department's strengths, weaknesses, and their needs. And then we're going to establish timelines. I'm very much a planner and want to make sure that things happen timely. And then I also want to start on working on the budget. The budget is where people entrust us with their most sacred possession that they give to the city, which is money. And I want to make sure that we're meeting the needs as well as the wants of individuals, and that we're making Lynnwood a place we all want to be, whether we live here, we work here, we play here, or like I do, all 3.
Excellent, thank you. Jim Smith's biography intro. He says nothing is more important than bringing our community together, and he is the one that can do it as the next mayor of Lynnwood. Having the most experience by far, Jim has been a member of the Lynnwood City Council for over 25 years. He has owned a local corporation with dozens of employees, produced a multitude of events at the Seattle Center, Paramount, and other venues, and has created many Lynnwood organizations and events, such as the Lynnwood Christmas Tree Lighting and Celebration and the Lynnwood 4th of July celebration. He was also chairman of Lynnwood's festival for 4 years, during which, for the older generation, he brought Pat Paulson, as well as Sugarloaf to Lynnwood. Jim was the founder and past president of Lynnwood Chamber, as well as state president of the Washington Pilots Association. While serving on city council, Jim has a proven record of lowering taxes for our residents and supporting the local small businesses in Lynnwood that make our community so great. He is a strong advocate for keeping our parks beautiful and safe, as well as improving our local roads. Jim considers public safety to be the highest priority and has a track record of supporting local law enforcement to prove it. He is the only candidate that is endorsed by the Lynnwood Police Guild, Deputies Sheriff's Guild, and Snohomish County Sheriff Adam Fortin, as well as dozens of former first responders and chiefs. Jim has lived a life of diversity and has a proven record of engagement with many in the local minority communities. Most of his childhood was in the Pacific and Asia. Over 24 Korean businesses have currently endorsed Jim. He is the first candidate in Lynnwood to have outreach chairs for both the Latino and Korean communities, as well as special phone numbers. Sorry, I'm going to reread that. As well as special phone numbers residents can reach to speak in either Spanish or Korean. Jim has dedicated his campaign to 3 virtues: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Now is a critical time. Now is the time for a leader that will focus on what makes Lynnwood so great. Vote Jim for Mayor Lynnwood. So Jim, first question to you. The mayor is the chief administrative officer for the city, in charge of staffing, responsible for its daily operations, and implements legislation passed by the council. What will your top 3 priorities be if elected to office?
Well, forever I have been pushing the idea. It has been on my website, in my promotional material, and what I do for the council for over 25 years, and that is public safety has to be number 1. It doesn't matter how beautiful our parks are if it's not safe to go in the parks because of syringes or other problems. So public safety has to be number 1. Lowering the taxes. Lynnwood has some of the highest taxes in the state, and what we need to be doing is lowering those taxes, and there's ways of doing that. It seems like politicians, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody in particular, but politicians have a tendency to raise taxes, and then if things go bad, they don't lower them for the people that are hurt in our community. Number 3 is reducing the street homelessness and the drug use. We're not doing people any favors by tolerating their drug use. We need to have compassion and giving them alternatives and to do something about that.
Thank you. So, since I asked Frizzell the first question first, I'll ask you the second question first, Jim, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. What do you feel are the top concerns facing small business owners in Lynnwood, and what do you propose to address those concerns?
Probably the biggest problem we have with the small businesses, their problems I should say, is that it seems like they're ignored, and we need to be we need to be working with them a lot closer in order to help them do what they need in our community. Our community doesn't need to be helping the huge big corporations. What our community really needs to do is be helping these small businesses by stopping by, talking to them in person, seeing what's going on, and seeing what we can do to help them to bring customers into their businesses. That's a very important thing, and having been a corporate owner for so many years, actually having employees that are working for me, I know the struggles that the businesses have, the small businesses have, and I plan to roll up my sleeves and going out there and actually helping them with making them successful. They are crucial to the city of Lynnwood.
Thank you. And then, Christine, the same question to you. What do you feel are the top concerns facing small business owners in Lynnwood, and what do you propose to address those concerns?
I think the biggest concern that they have right now after we've gone through this period of COVID is fighting the ease of online shopping. I know I was guilty of that through COVID. It was just easier to shop online, but now I'm really looking forward to making sure that I'm supporting our businesses. And the other area that I really want to hit on is the head tax. We have a fee that is charged to businesses when they relicense, and it's based upon part-time and full-time employees, and it's convoluted, and I'm not sure that it really makes sense to a lot of business owners. There are programs as well that the state and the federal government have out there. So I want to coordinate with our Chamber of Commerce, with our state resources, and educate our small businesses about the unknown programs. Our small businesses in particular, they get into business because they feel a need, they have a passion for the product or the service that they sell, and quite often they give all of their savings to get into business and to stay into business. And we need to come alongside them. We need to highlight them. We need to shine a light on them. And if possible, maybe we can get a Shop Lynnwood program going on. The Chamber has done that with restaurants, and I've tried out a few new restaurants through that app. But right now we need to get through COVID. We need to get people back out into the neighborhoods, back out into the small stores so that they can thrive and stop feeding Amazon.
Excellent. Thank you. So this next question is going to be to you first, Christine. Excluding changing housing and zoning codes, how would you make Lynnwood better for seniors?
I think the biggest thing that I hear when I talk to seniors is it's hard to get around. Many of them don't drive. We need better sidewalks. I'm out on the street a lot these days and tripping over sidewalks that aren't straight, sidewalks that create very big trip hazards. This year, our streets department has put a lot of time, effort, and money into creating ADA ramps around the city. We're vastly behind in getting that done for people. We need a safer walking area for people. The other thing is we need to get our senior center back and ramped up. We need places for people to go, especially during COVID. So many people have isolated. I live with, or my 88-year-old dad lives with me, I live with him, whatever. We're in the house together, and he doesn't go out and he doesn't interact with people nearly as much anymore, and it's taking its toll. We need places for people to go, and especially seniors. They need to know that they've got community, that they've got people that care for them, that provide for them. And we have an excellent senior center when they're allowed to be ramped up. So those are the areas that I'd really like to see us move into.
Thank you, Christine. Jim, same question to you. Excluding changing housing and zoning codes, how would you make Lynnwood better for seniors?
Well, I'm already kind of doing that. I've been doing that for many, many, many years. As many people know, I'm actually out in the community doing what I call music therapy shows for seniors, doing over 100, normal times, doing over 150 shows a year. This is able to connect with the seniors. They are so appreciative of people coming out there and talking to them, being involved. And so I plan that once I'm mayor, I'm going to continue doing that. I've had several that have asked me, well, once you're mayor, are you no longer come out here to do our shows? And I said, absolutely, because I think it's important for me to be able to connect to you, to be able to see what's going on here. And the senior center is nice. In fact, I was the one that got the senior center to Lynnwood in the first place. It used to be in Edmonds, and the whole idea was, well, all of our seniors can go down to Edmonds to be part of the senior center. Well, I had to fight hard, and we finally got our first senior center in Lynnwood about 15, 20 years ago. So that is the number one thing. We definitely need to connect with them. We need to have be personally involved. We need to have heart and to go out there and talk to them and listen to them and help them with what they are doing, what they need. They need connection more than anything. I've been doing that, and I'll continue to do that even more.
Thank you, Jim. This next question is to you first, Jim. In what ways could the city's comprehensive plan be improved to facilitate Lynnwood's housing action plan of an additional 9,826 units by 2044?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's one I'm happy to address. For some reason, we're on this kick to build more and more and more apartments in Lynnwood and not be doing as much saving our single-family residents. We need to be taking care of our Lynnwood residents first, whether it be in apartments, condos, single-family, townhomes, or whatever. But it seems like the kick has been, well, let's just build more and more and more. And I think what we need to do there is be looking at what can we do to have safe housing, do all we can for the builders to be building houses that are a little bit more, the single families, a little bit more affordable. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding going on here. And with that rebuilding, we can have lower setbacks, we can have more single family homes per acre than we do now, and make it very livable for everyone. But the idea that we just go out there and have another 8, 10, 12,000 units, that's crazy. That's putting a lot of burden on the people in Lynnwood. We are elected to represent them. the people of Lynnwood. And that's what I plan to do.
And Christine, I'll read the question again for you.
Sure.
In what ways could the city's comprehensive plan be improved to facilitate Lynnwood's housing action plan of an additional 9,826 units by 2044?
So in 2019, council formed a housing policy committee, and Councilmember Hurst and I co-chaired that group. We met with developers, builders, management agencies, low-income housing providers, and more. And we got all of this great information, and then we forwarded it, and I'm looking forward to having that come out in our housing action plan. And a big part of that was creating space, not just building multi-family houses or multi-family units, but actually creating space within our single-family neighborhoods that are zoned for that. And whether that comes from an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, or a detached accessory dwelling unit, or it comes from adding a duplex, or maybe even a triplex into our already single-family neighborhoods, that's a way that we can grow, and it becomes part of the environment. I'm not at all about going to our single-family neighborhoods and then putting in a 200 or 300 unit apartment building, or even a 20 or 30 unit apartment building. That would ruin the look and feel of our precious single-family neighborhoods. My grandparents came here on a covered wagon from South Dakota and set up an egg farm just outside of Lynnwood city limits. They had 10 acres. There was a time when that didn't fit anymore. They had 15 sons. All of them bought houses when they were much more affordable. But they were on big lots. I live on a lot that's a 1/4 acre. And there's enough room there for more density. And we need to put into our comprehensive plan how we intend to do that. But we can't make it so strict that builders can't be part of it. So we need builders' input, we need developers' input as we move down that path. And, we don't own, we don't operate any housing as a city, but it depends a lot on collaborative efforts. We're not going to get there with just the city council and just the mayor's office. We're going to be collaborating with a lot of people, and even with people at the state and federal government side.
Excellent, thank you. So this next question does have...
So there seems to be a little a difference of opinion on this question. Would you like to add, or would you like to rebut, Ken?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Mario, for bringing that up. What I do see is a lack of protecting the city, the single family, excuse me, the single family residents. And think about this: if you're in a single family zone, you've got houses all around you. The idea of then someone coming in, tearing down your neighbors' houses because they're ready to be remade, and then putting in a duplex, triplex, fourplex, those will be rental properties that will make a difference in your property. We need to be working on saving the single family units and having the least amount of impact on those units, on those single family houses. So we owe it to the people that live here now, not bringing in multifamily housing in our single family units. That can be very destructive.
And I see it as making way for the next generation. There's a lot of people that want to live here. There's a lot of people that come to Lynnwood either to work or to live. And we need to make some space. As I said, we're not talking about making huge changes. We're talking about making small changes to create space for people who want to live here, and also to create rental opportunities for people who already do own their homes. My parents have lived in the house I live in now since 1965, and there's space. And that's why I put on an accessory dwelling unit back in 2005, with the idea that as my family my daughters moved out, went on with their lives, as my parents moved forward, I would then be able to rent that out. And I think that's the mindset that we need to have, is how do we make room for other people? There's no more room in Lynnwood. There's not much room in Lynnwood to build more of a single family neighborhood. And that's disconcerting. But we're landlocked. We can't do a thing about that. But what we can do is make room.
If I could, just a quick, very short response, and that is, that shows the difference, is that I believe in that we need to be focused like a laser on the people that live here in Lynnwood, rather than seeing what we can do to bring more and more people from outside into Lynnwood. That's the difference that I see.
I'll just insert one thing there. My accessory dwelling unit, my daughter and my son-in-law live there. It's not about bringing more people in. It's about providing for our families and providing for one another. I don't think accessory dwelling units are going to act. Maybe they will bring in lots of people.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a good tie into our next question here, and that is, I asked you the second question last, right? So it's your turn for first.
I believe so.
I think so. Okay. So how do you recommend diversifying revenue for the city?
Well, the interesting thing is that cities can't really diversify their revenue. We're locked in by state statutes and others that we can only provide, or we can only receive revenue from property taxes, sales taxes, business and utility taxes, lodging taxes, REIT, and state shared revenue. So taxes are what we have. We can add some use taxes there for parks and for roads. But as far as diversifying, we don't own things, we don't manage things. We need to be working with state and federal sources. We have a federal lobbyist that helps us with grants. There's a lot of federal money, a lot of state money out there, and Lynnwood has been very successful in getting grant money. That's how we can then leverage the money we do get, the money that we do have in reserve, and I'm so thankful that we do have a forward-thinking financial system where we do put money into reserve, so when opportunities come up, when grant opportunities come up, we can then move ahead on projects. But as far as diversifying revenue, there's not much we can do.
Well, what about attracting more living wage jobs to the city?
I love that idea. Let's do it.
How would you go about doing it? Do you have any idea?
Sure, we need to have companies that want to be in Lynnwood that pay living wage jobs. And whether that's, we have some manufacturing areas off in our South Lynnwood area, maybe we get that more ramped up. We have professional services, whether they're lawyers or insurance brokers or whatnot. Let's ramp that up. And then let's talk with our small businesses. I mean, really talk in a group, in many groups, regularly. And by that I mean at least monthly. Let's talk about what the problems are, why they can't pay a living wage job. And again, I think a big part of it is Lynnwood people need to get out there and spend our money locally. I think that's going to be a big push to getting living wage jobs. I've talked to someone recently and they have 3 jobs in order to make their rent payment. And that's just not right. We need to also offer educational opportunities for people to move up forward, but that kind of gets off the question.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. And then for Jim, how do you recommend diversifying the city revenue?
Well, I loved it when I saw that question because I'm going, good grief, we don't need to have more revenue sources. I've been through 12 budget periods in the city of Lynnwood. One thing that just has always appalled me is that we keep on talking about we're a bit short with our funding. So what can we do to raise more money? It seems like we're never talking about what can we do to be cutting back. What can we do to be more frugal with our money? I'll give you one good example of something that has floored me, because I was on the council for 24 years, left for 8 years, and now I've been on for almost 2 years. One thing that floored me when I got back was that the city of Lynnwood has leased a property for some of our personnel, and it's for the DBS portion of the city, and we're paying $25,000 a month. $25,000 a month for that rental, and we got another 6 years on that. I would love to see us go ahead and sublet that property, bring those people back. In fact, we had a study that said that those people should be on our city property. They should be on our city campus. So what can we do to cut back? Because everybody's households, they need to be, when they're running short of funds, they don't say, well, let me get another second, third, fourth job, although some people do. They say, well, what can we do to cut back? What can we do to not have to spend so much money per month? But it seems like government doesn't do that. I will propose and I will put into action where we're a lot more frugal and we're cutting back on some of our expenses.
Thank you,
Do
Jim.
you have a rebuttal?
I just have something to add. Jim and I are in total agreement that, we want to cut taxes. I want to cut taxes in a way where we are cutting the expenses, but not just take a red line and go boom, 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 we're done with that. We need to be looking at it from all perspectives as we think about what services are we currently providing that we're not really using. We have a budget model called budgeting for outcomes, and we need to be using that even more. It's been here, I think, for 3 budget cycles, and I want to take it to the next level. So we are really looking at what are we getting for the money we're putting in? And then that way we know that if times get tight, we know where we can cut back. We know where we can save. And, when we talk about the high taxes in Lynnwood, if you look at your property tax, average property tax in Lynnwood is $4,020. But if you look in the fine print, or it's not even that fine, if you look at the allocation, the amount that comes to Lynnwood is only $227 out of that $4,000. We talk about how we have high sales tax. We talk about that it is 10.5%, which is one of the highest in the state. There's a couple that are the same as us. But of that, only 1.1% comes back to Lynnwood. That means that on every dollar that you spend in sales tax, the city gets 11 cents. So if you take those taxes, plus we have a tax on our utilities, you add all of those up and say that you're spending $30,000 a year on things that you would pay tax on. You're still at only less than $800 a year that comes back to our city. So when we talk about cutting taxes, I think we need to get a hold of our state representatives and see where we can cut them at that level. Because if you go the $800 divided by 12, you're talking $60 a month for each household to live here.
If I could follow up on that, then the one thing that I think we disagree on is the cutting back taxes. I actually do believe, and I'm a person of action, to cut back taxes. So during this pandemic, when all the families were hurting so bad, I thought, one thing that we can do is we can cut back just one of the 11 utility taxes that we have here in Lynnwood. So I made a motion to cut back just the 6% tax, which it goes to the general fund, on the water tax that we have here in Lynnwood, on the water usage. That passed the council 4-3. So we were going to help the small people here, or the residents here in Lynnwood, to do better, to be able to make it through this pandemic. Just by a little amount. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. And hopefully we'll be able to do more of that in the future. The mayor vetoed that, stating that the city needed the money. Well, that's a good area where, once again, I get back to this question was asked earlier, what can we do about the revenues? What can we do about the diversity of revenue sources, we can cut back, and we can start cutting back the expenditures that we do. Let's not lay that burden on the people of Lynnwood. Let's go ahead and slowly but surely reduce all those utility taxes. 15 years ago, we didn't have any utility taxes. Zero. Slowly but surely, we maxed out every single one. And then just one last thing, discussing in regards to the sales tax. We are the highest sales tax in the state. And if you look at your property taxes, you can't just look at the property taxes, what goes to Lynnwood. You have to look at what the property taxes goes to Lynnwood. And also the fire district. That money used to be money that went to the city. So that's how you have to compare it. Add that to it. And that gives you a realistic of what it's costing you in taxes here in Lynnwood. It's outrageous. We need to fix that.
Now, we're short on time, so these responses have to be less than 1 minute.
Got it. And the context for this question, there's some context. If you need me to reread the question, I'm more than happy to do so. But we're going to start with Jim on this one. So the question is, after considering the debt accumulated from both the convention center and recreation center, city financial advisors determined that approximately $79.6 million of bond capacity can be leveraged without voter approval. Given that approximately $79 million is estimated for both the Community Justice Center and the new Community Recovery Center, how would you propose the city fund future development projects?
Well, I think you kind of framed that in what some of the problem we have with government is we spent all this money. What can we do to spend more money? And I think that the first thing that we should be doing is that we should be seeing what can we do within our budget. Now, the numbers that you gave, one thing that you left out, and when you were talking about the Community Justice Center, there's also a part of that is actually going to be separate for helping people with various other mental issues, drug issues, et cetera, and so on. We have been promised by both the county and the state. We haven't seen it, and I'll believe it when I do see it, but we've been promised millions of dollars to pay for that portion of it. So that the number that you talked about is actually much, much higher than reality, because we have those other millions of dollars that are coming in. That said, as we have, as the city of Lynnwood grows, we have more capacity.
And do you want me to reread from the top?
I've got it right here.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
So I don't disagree with anything that Jim has talked about. The bond capacity has been talked about for 2 years. Do we have enough? How can we repay the Community Justice Center bond? And there are resources that we can use for that. The amount that we're paying out for housing inmates in other jails. We have part of the county sales tax that comes to us to the police department. We'll be using that. It's not all going to come out of the general budget. A good chunk of it is, and there is a plan for repayment. This was vetted with all the directors. It was vetted through the Finance Committee, which I have chaired for 3 years. There is a rational, transparent approach to dealing with this. And part of it too is working with our partners at the state level, at the federal level. Lauren Davis, who's a representative for our area, was able to come on board and bring with her promises, which I'll believe when I see it, but promises that there would be funding for the additional Community Recovery Center. And I think I know we're gonna make it.
Excellent. All right, and then this last question we'll start with Christine. Earlier this year, the Washington State Legislature passed a series of police reform laws regarding use of force. Overwhelmingly, law enforcement officers throughout the state argue that these new laws inhibit them from catching criminals and keeping communities and themselves safe. Would you support a resolution requesting the governor, the Washington State Legislature, and the Attorney General to assist in providing clarification of these new law enforcement standards and requirements?
I don't know that we need a resolution to do that. John Lovick, who was a big part of that legislation, has already been down and talked with our chief. I've talked to a lot of people, individual officers. I've sat in on some seminars, and I think that there are just way too many unanswered concerns and questions and expectations and unintended consequences. I know this was not created in a vacuum. I know that there were wonderful civic-minded people who helped enact this legislation, but I'm not sure that they thought about how is it going to play out on the streets. And in one of my roles as a board member for the Gene Kim Foundation, we've already had to deal with that with homeless folks. The police say that they can't deal with the same way that we used to. It's harder to trespass people. It's harder to arrest them for their bad choices. There needs to be communication between all the counties in Washington so that as we talk about, somebody has to have been touched twice through the police system before they can be arrested. They have to be offered services. I think that the enactment of that, the actual rubber meeting the road, is where we need more conversation. But I don't know that we need a resolution. People in the legislature are reaching out already. They know there's issues.
Yeah, this has been very problematic, this particular law that was passed. And I think that what happens is, and I'm quite concerned that it is going to be, how it's going to be overturned, or how is it going to be, I should say, corrected. We should have never gotten there in the first place, where the police department is not allowed to do what their job is. And their job is to keep all of us in Lynnwood safe. I've been meeting with several of the people in the law enforcement. I have a lot of public safety support. And they feel their hands are tied. When their hands are tied, we're not doing any good for people that are on drugs. We're not doing any good for people that are on the streets. We need to be able to help our police help them. And we can't do that if we stay locked up in a closet and say, police, just stay home because we'll call you if it's a big, big, big emergency. We need to be helping them on the ground level. We need to be helping them with the small stuff so that it won't get bigger.
And in 30 seconds or less, I can remember who went last time.
Oh, no, it'd be Jim to this. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's much discussion about the term equity, but what does equity mean to you?
Equity it's an interesting term that I think that some people don't even realize what it means. From what I understand, equity means that no matter what happens, it's going to have the same. You get the same results. To me, that is more detrimental than it is helping. I think we need to have equal opportunities. I think that we need to have where anybody, whether they're from the Bahamas or from Renton, can be coming to Lynnwood, and they will have equal opportunities. I want this country, I want this state, I want this city to be colorblind. That said, there's a lot that we can do to help people help themselves. We, as you mentioned earlier, we have the Korean community that we have been working with. We have the Latino community that we've been working with, but it's not just people of color. There's a lot of people we need to help. And as mayor of Lynnwood, I will do that.
So for me, equity means that if it doesn't work for some, it doesn't work for all. So we need to be mindful of that as we look at our policies and our programs. We need more input from other cultures that have chosen to live here. What we think of as white Lynnwood people is not necessarily what my neighbor who came here from Africa thinks of as a city. We need to think about it in a more global way. We need to have those conversations. We just hired a race and social justice coordinator to help us scrub our policies and say, okay, this is a hang-up for Japanese people. This is a hang-up for Korean people. And then we need to devise a policy that doesn't take away from anyone, but helps everyone thrive. And that's what I'll be doing as your mayor, is creating an environment where we all thrive.
Thank you too, both of you. Closing remarks, I will start with Christine Frizzell.
All right. Thank you, Mario. Thank you both
Yeah.
for having us here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the passion in my heart as to why I got involved with politics. Politics has kind of an ugly term these days, but it really is more about governance and leadership. And that's what I bring. I haven't been involved in city governance for decades. I came to it late in life. I always just thought the city did whatever the city wanted to do. And a number of years ago, after a trip to the Congo, I looked at my city differently. And I thought, I could get involved with this. I can make a difference. And I appreciate that Jim has a historical perspective. We have some council members that have been on council off and on for years. They bring the great historical perspective to us. But what I'm looking at are fresh ideas, fresh ways to do things, ways that maybe we haven't always done it that way before, but ways that really speak to the people who are part of Lynnwood and for the generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes, the mayor of Lynnwood needs to be totally engaged with the people and the stakeholders of our community. From day one, I'll bring my 25 years of management experience and drive to the city of Lynnwood. As mayor, I'll represent you, the people of Lynnwood, and will not allow regional problems to infest our community. One thing I like to say, and I stole this from someone else, I won't mention who, is don't Seattle our Lynnwood. We need to make a point that the problems of down in Seattle on the freeways do not infest our Lynnwood communities. We need to have a safe, prosperous city and be focused on you, the people of Lynnwood. I appreciate all of you, and I'd appreciate your vote.
All right, thank you.